Good morning, everybody. My name is Jackie Rowe, and I'm one of the marketing managers here at Cisco Meraki. And today I'm going to take you through an introduction to cloud managed IT. Now, while we wait for the last few people to join the webinar today, I want to take a quick moment to look at the agenda. We're first going to start off with an introduction to Cisco Meraki for those of you who might not be too familiar with the product solution. Then we're going to jump right into the technology architecture, why we're seeing so many IT professionals moving towards cloud managed IT. And then we're going to spend the majority of today's time actually in a live product demo showing you the features and the functionalities of the Cisco Meraki solution. Now, if you do have any questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the Q&A or the chat box of WebEx, and I'll be periodically taking a look at them and answering them for the group. I'm also pleased to announce that for all the qualified IT professionals in attendance today, we will be giving out a free 802.11 AC Wave 2 access point along with a 3-year cloud management license. Now, this device is yours to keep. We essentially want to put the product in your hands and have you really try out the features and the functionalities of the solution and hopefully fall in love with it. Now, in order to receive that access point, you just need to fall into our eligibility rules, and you can find them at meraki.cisco.com/free AP. And then in order to get that access point, we do need to confirm your shipping information before we can send that device out to you. And so you can find your representative's contact details in the reminder email for today's webinar, or you can reach out at meraki.cisco.com/contact. Either way will work just fine, but we do need to confirm your shipping information before we send that device out to you. So let's go ahead and dive right in. A little bit about Meraki, who we are and what we do. We are a 100% cloud-managed IT company. So what does that really mean? Well, as you can see in the graphic on the left-hand side there, we have 6 main product portfolios. We have our wireless access points. We have our security appliances. These are unified threat management devices. They do the job of about 6 different devices all in one. We have our access and aggregation switches, our communications portfolio, our enterprise mobility management platform, and the latest addition, which are the security cameras. Now, all 6 of these product lines are in constant communication with the cloud, which is doing the heavy lifting of monitoring and managing all of that complex information, and then getting it to you in a very easy to understand way in Dashboard. So Dashboard is your browser-based management tool, whether you have the Meraki app installed on a mobile device or whether you're logging into dashboard.meraki.com. It gives you the ability to monitor, to manage, to remotely configure your entire network, no matter where you are and no matter where the network is deployed. So it is a complete remote management. Now, Meraki is a leader in cloud-managed networking, and we are among Cisco's fastest-growing portfolios. We have over 200,000 unique customers and over 2 million Meraki devices online at any given time. So how does it all work? Well, it's a completely out-of-band control plane, so no end-user traffic passes to the cloud. Only monitoring and management data passes to the cloud, and that's about 1 kilobit per second per device. So it's a pretty minimal impact on your overall network bandwidth usage. We do have data centers around the globe, including 3 right here in Europe, and those are in Frankfurt, Munich, and Dublin. Now, what that means for you as a European customer is that when you first create your Meraki organization in Dashboard, you simply choose that you're part of the EMEA region, and it ensures that your data stays right here and is compliant with EU privacy laws. So it's not going to go traipsing around the world. It is going to stay right here and be compliant with those laws. We also have PCI compliance, and Meraki itself is level 1 certified. And we run third-party security audits as well as daily penetration tests to ensure ongoing security. Now, if you have questions about scalability, security, data centers, reliability, anything of that sort, you can find an entire section of our website dedicated to that information at meraki.cisco.com/trust. So what are some of the IT challenges that we're seeing, and why are we developing a solution like we are? Well, part of my job here at Meraki is actually speaking with our customers on a weekly basis. And I get to hear about a lot of the challenges that they were facing before they switched to the Meraki solution. And I have 3 of them on the screen here, and I'd like to quickly walk through them. The first one is this idea of billions of mobile devices. The last survey I read, so the average person carries between 3 to 5 smart devices per person. Now, when you start thinking about what those devices are, that number does not seem so astronomical. You might have a work laptop and a personal laptop. You might have a work mobile device, a mobile phone, and a personal mobile phone. You might have a tablet. You might have an e-reader. And you're getting all of these devices. And the struggle that IT professionals are running into right now is that people expect these devices to work no matter where they are, whether they're in a coffee shop, whether they're out shopping, whether they are going for a partner visit to another site, or whether they're simply at work themselves. They want these devices to work, but the IT team needs to make sure that the network remains secure even with the usage of these devices, and that the usage of these devices does not compromise the network security. So you have a lot of different elements that are at play here. And with the Meraki solution, we have a complete end-to-end solution that can actually help make sure that your network not only remains secure, but also is efficient for employee usage and also creates potential new business opportunities. So the next aspect that I want to talk about is streaming of rich media. Now, the streaming of rich media here, more and more professionals are relying on things like WebEx or video chats or things like that to conduct their day-to-day business operations. It's a bit more efficient, a bit more time efficient than going necessarily to an on-site meeting somewhere and having to spend the travel time. So we're getting a lot more of these types of meetings globally. And with the Meraki solution, you can actually go in and set quality of service rules to actually prioritize this type of traffic, not just on, let's say, the switches, but you can also do it on a per access point level as well. And then the last aspect here is new business opportunities. Your network has to do more than just be a network these days. Your entire IT infrastructure has to work a little bit harder in order to earn its keep. And so we have built a lot of analytics into the Meraki system in order to provide you with different business insights that can actually turn your IT into a revenue generating machine for your organization, or at the very least, just make your business run a bit more efficiently across the board. So we're going to talk a little bit more when we get into the demo about things like location analytics, user engagement, things like that. The brilliant thing about all of these elements that I've just talked about is that they're available out of the box with the Meraki solution. So it's not like you have to purchase more and more features in order for these things to work. It is simply one license per device, and that's it. Now, before you run screaming in the wrong direction about, oh my gosh, there's a license, hear me out. I like to think of our licensing as having four main components. The first component is the fact that you have access to this dashboard globally. No matter where you are, you have remote access into your network. You can remotely configure, monitor, everything. The second main thing that you get with that license is your warranty. We have a lifetime warranty on the indoor access points. We have a lifetime warranty on the security appliances, on the switches, and we have a limited warranty on the outdoor access points, the security cameras, and the telephones. So the third thing that this license gives you is access to 24/7 dedicated Meraki support. So no matter what time of day or night you call in with a question, with a comment, just have a chat, whatever it might be, you're going to be connected directly to a Meraki specialist that's sitting in our London, Sydney, or San Francisco offices, and they're going to help you from beginning all the way to resolution. And then the final thing that that license gives you is access to all future feature releases and all future firmware updates at no additional cost. So what we see on the screen here are just a handful of some of these releases that we've seen for our core 4 product lines over the past few years. So these are features that, for example, did not exist when we first launched these products, but we've been able to add in, and our customers have been able to benefit from since their purchasing of those devices. So let me give you a really quick analogy, another way to think about this. A lot of people these days have a smartphone. Well, I have a smartphone. I happen to have an Android phone. I don't came across most of these smartphones. Just last week, I received a notification on my phone that I had a system update available, and it asked me if I wanted to go ahead and download that now, or if I wanted to wait until I was on a Wi-Fi network, maybe back home, etc. So it gave me that option to decide when I wanted to update. When I actually decided I want to update now, I said update, and it downloaded the update and installed it. And when it was finished, I looked at my phone, and physically, my phone was still a phone. Shocking. It hadn't changed. However, when I turned my phone on, when I turned that screen on, I realized that there were features that I've never seen before that I now benefited from. And there were other features that I had on my phone which had been made better. They'd been optimized. And so essentially, I was getting a brand new phone at no additional cost because my phone now ran more efficiently, it ran faster, and I had access to a lot more features that enabled me to do more with my device. And that concept is the same for the Meraki devices. You can simply schedule an update window to happen. So for example, maybe Saturday to Sunday midnight time frame. Maybe that's when users are not using your network and that's when you can schedule an update. Maybe you want to defer an update. Maybe you don't want to do it quite yet. Or maybe you want to manually schedule a particular update to happen at a particular time. It's up to you. Once that happens, the update occurs, and essentially you get brand new features, brand new optimizations, etc. And you can track the new features and the update logs within your dashboard as well. So you're not going to be lost in terms of what happened, what was changed. So that is a huge benefit here. And that is something, like I said, that's all rolled into that license. So let's go ahead and move over to a demo now. I'm going to go ahead and share my Google Chrome window with you. Now, before I started today's webinar, I actually went ahead and logged into dashboard.meraki.com, and I'm taken to this overview screen. Now, on this overview screen, this is the Meraki Global Network. So I'm able to see our London offices over here, where I'm speaking to you from today. Don't let the accent fool you, I am sitting here in London. We have our Australian offices down here in Sydney, and our headquarters over here in San Francisco. Now, these icons, these nodes, are indicating the network health. So when I log into my network, the first thing that I can see is how healthy is my network? Is anything alerting? Do I need to take notice? Well, first, if something is alerting, you can come over here to network-wide alerts, and you can actually configure alerts to notify you in the event of certain instances. So for example, if an access point should fall out of gateway mode for whatever reason and fail over into mesh mode, you can receive an email notification letting you know that that's happened. Or let's say you have worm spare backup for your switches and your primary switch goes offline for whatever reason and fails over. Well, again, you can receive an alert. So you configure that over here under the alerts option. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But that's one way to be notified is that email alert, that text message alert. Another way is to log into this dashboard and see, hey, this node is bright red. Let me click into San Francisco and find out what's going on here. So as I dive in, this is our Meraki headquarters building in the heart of San Francisco. And as I hover over these nodes once again are overlaying different networks that we have. Now we have a lot of different networks in our San Francisco office, and these networks tend to go online, offline, healthy, unhealthy, all the time. And the reason for that is that that's where our research and development team is, and they're constantly testing out new products, new features, new firmware updates, etc., and essentially trying out all these different types of situations and scenarios to make sure that our devices are optimally suited for our customers. So to be honest, this is actually quite normal for us to see a network showing up as red, but if it was your network and that's not normal, you could click straight into that network and find out more detailed information. Now, the other thing that you can do here is expand out this network list. Now, we have 54 networks that are within our larger global organization, and I can see all of those in this list here. I can see the network health of each of those networks. Up here, I can see globally how many clients we've seen, how much bandwidth we have had, and then I can see that on a per network breakdown here. If I scroll over, there's a couple of columns that I want to show you. The first column here is this templates column. This is going to show you which of your networks are bound to a template. Now, what is a template? Well, it is what the package says. So, for example, we have a customer here in Europe. They have about 12,000 stores. It's a retail customer. And when they were deploying the Meraki solution, they realized that most of their stores fell into a small, a medium, or a large size deployment situation. And they realized that they could actually have the same type of deployment and the same type of configurations based on the size of the store. So what they did, instead of having to configure 12,000 networks, what they did is they configured 3. They went down here, and I'm going to get to this in just a minute, under Organizations to Configuration Templates. And they created 3 networks, the small, the medium, and the large size. And they went in there and said, okay, if it's a small network, we need to have these settings. If it's a medium-sized network, we need to have these settings plus this additional SSID because we have these people coming into our medium-sized stores, but not the small stores. You get the idea. And then what they were able to do was take all of those 12,000 stores and say, all right, stores 1 through 1,000, you are a small store, so I'm going to bind you to that small store template. As soon as they bound those stores to the template, those stores instantly reached out to the cloud and downloaded the configurations that were assigned in that template. So literally in a matter of seconds, they went from having one template configured to having 1,000 stores configured. It was that easy to do. And then they replicated that for their medium and large size deployments as well. So here what we're seeing is we have some templates for our teleworkers, so our home workers, and we have some of those bound to a template. So those home workers, we simply say, you're in the U.S. and you're a teleworker? Great. Let me bind you to the U.S. teleworker template, and it will give you all the configurations that you need for your home office device. It's that simple to do. Now, the last column here is the firmware status column. So I was talking about the ability to keep your network always up to date. It's included in licensing, all future firmware updates, all future feature releases. Well, this is the column that's going to tell you if there's an update available. So you can see if it is up to date, there's an update available. I can go ahead and click into this and actually open up a new window here. And I can see, all right, this device is in this time zone, and maybe we need to set up an update for it. However, this one happens to be bound to a template, so I'm going to update the template, not this one. But you get the idea. You can click in. You can see all of these that have an update available, and then you can start configuring them and making sure that they are completely up to date with no update needed. All right, I'm going to scroll down here to our San Francisco location. Now, mind you, I'm sitting in our London office, and I'm clicking into San Francisco. The reason I am doing this is because I want to highlight the fact that if something happens in our San Francisco office, it's about 2:17 in the morning in San Francisco, and if I wanted to make a change or do something to that network, I would have to get on an Uber or a taxi or take the underground out to Heathrow. That's about an hour and a half, 2-hour commute from where I'm sitting right now in central London, plus about a 10 or 11-hour flight to San Francisco, plus another hour to commute from that airport to the office there. I mean, that's about a 14-hour trip just to get to that office before you can even start to understand what's going on. Rather, I can stay sitting here in our Moorgate office. I can log into our San Francisco dashboard and say, all right, show me what's going on here. On this overview page here, this is our client overview page, the first thing that I see are the clients. So I can see that we have about 2,500 client devices that have connected to that network in the last day. I can change that time frame as I need. I can see that these are both wired and wireless clients, so clients that are accessing our network via the access points, switches, etc. 2,500 client devices, that is a lot, especially if you have that one person raising an IT ticket saying, I cannot connect to the internet. We've all been there before, right? Or the internet is slow. Well, let's look up one of those clients. I can search on George, for example, or I can search on, let's say, another user like a Simon and pull up Simon's devices. So I'm just going to open this in a new window. I can click into this one user and start seeing more detailed information about the device. I can see when they were last seen on the network. I can see on a blueprint here that we've uploaded where they were last seen. I can see which access point they last connected to. If I click into this topology, I can actually have a real-time live view of how my entire network is connected. Now, this is something that is created automatically. You don't have to create this topology view. So we'll click into that in just a minute. Down here, I can see that they logged into our network using 802.1x authentication, device type. I can see the amount of usage for the last day, or maybe if I want to change this to the last week, I can see their usage there. And policy information, network information, etc. So there's a lot of really great information that you can glean from this user. The other thing that you can do is say, all right, I can't see anything obvious on this page. Let's take a look at the event log for this device and for the access point that they're connecting to. Or let's run a packet capture. So here I can take a look at the event log. And so here we're looking at an event log for that client device. And we can run back here and see what exactly is going on here. I can run a packet capture on the access point that the client device was associated with. You get the idea. So there's a lot of remote troubleshooting tools that are built straight into this dashboard that allow you to see exactly what's going on. And this is that topology view. So like I said, this is generated automatically. It's real time, so as soon as you plug a new device in, this topology would update. And I'm just going to scroll down here. We have a lot of devices, but the reason I'm scrolling down is that you see a lot of these lines here are grayed out. Well, we do see one line here that's a bit darker than the rest. Now I can trace this line down, and as I trace it down, we see that it goes here through this stack of switches, through over here to this other stack of switches right here, and then finally out to the access point that this user connected to. So from here, I can actually route this all the way back up to our security appliance at the edge of our network. I can also, if we have a network device that is alerting, like this switch here, I can hover over that, and it's going to tell me exactly what the alert is and how I can fix it. So it's a really useful way to view how your network is connected. You can collapse this down to maybe 3 levels if it's a little bit easier for you to see everything that's connected out and just expand parts of the network. So it's a very simple way for you to view this. You can download this, you can print this, you can add it to a larger video file, whatever your needs are. But like I said, it's interactive, it's real time. I can hover over this and actually click straight back into any of these particular devices from this topology view. All right, let's jump back now to our client dashboard here. So on this client dashboard, I'm going to remove this search on a particular client. And you can also search on things like a printer. So if somebody calls in a help desk question and says, I cannot connect to this printer, my printer's not working, whatever the case may be, you can click in there, do the exact same troubleshooting on that device. You can search on things like Mac OS X and say, you know what, I need to update all of our devices to the latest version of Mac OS X. Search on that, see which devices are compliant and which devices need to be updated. A lot of useful tools there, and that's simply a search. The other useful thing on here is this application pie chart. So this chart here is a total bandwidth usage for the last day, and as I hover over each of these different applications, we're actually able to see how much of the bandwidth they have consumed. When I click into that, we get this nice table that drops down here, and I can sort based on usage. Now with this, if I scroll down here, we can actually view all, and this allows me to see all of the different applications that are being utilized in our network. Now, here at Meraki, we're a corporate organization. We tend to like to see applications like Salesforce or WebEx, potentially YouTube. We don't really do very much on Spotify or iTunes or Facebook or things like that. So those are not applications that I would expect to see very high in my list of overall network usage. So as I scroll down this list here, YouTube is one of the first ones that pops up as a big name to me. You know what, I'm okay with that. We do post quite a bit of case study videos as well as unboxing videos, how-to videos on YouTube, so we'll let that one slide. Scroll down a little bit further, WebEx, that's fine, I'm using it right now. A little bit further down, iTunes. This is not really an application that I think is important for our corporate organization. A little bit further down, Spotify. A little bit further down, finally we see Salesforce closely followed by Facebook. So what this is showing me is that we actually are getting a fair amount of usage on kind of non-important applications. So what I can do is I can click into an application like iTunes, and it's going to show me a little bit of a brief description about what the application is if you're unfamiliar with it. You can come down here and see all the different devices that are currently contributing towards that overall bandwidth usage, and these are sorted based on rule usage. So this allows you to say, do we have one user that's actually abusing their network privileges? Or is it actually all of the different users that are all using iTunes and slowly driving up this overall bandwidth consumption? So let's investigate this. Let's click into this one client and let's hypothetically say that they are abusing their network privileges. Maybe this one user is using 30% of the company's overall iTunes usage. That's a lot. So what I can do here is say, let's look at the last week for usage, and let's show details of that usage. This looks very similar to that application view that I was just looking at. We can see that iTunes is at the top of the list. So 64% of this user's overall usage for the last week has been on iTunes. That's a lot. So what we can do is we can scroll down here and say, all right, I'm going to classify this as network abuse. And this is something that's not okay with me. So I'm going to come down to the device policy, and I can actually block the user from the network altogether. So if you do have a troublesome user on the network, you can simply find their user profile, block them from the network. You can even leave them a nice little message that says something like too much iTunes, CIT, and they're going to have to come speak with the IT department before they're able to access the network again. It's that easy. Until that point in time, they're going to get a splash page that says, no bueno, you cannot log in. The other thing that you can do here is after you've talked to them, You can say, all right, you said that that was an accident. You're never going to do it again. I can add them back to our normal policy. The other thing that I can do is add them to a group policy. Now, a group policy is a subset of your overarching network policy. So you might say, for anybody that's on our corporate SSID, you're going to have access to X, Y, and Z. However, if you're on our group policy, we're going to modify that access a little bit. Instead of having access to X, Y, and Z, you're going to have access to X, Y, not Z, because you've proven that you're going to abuse your usage of Z. And that might be video and music applications, for example. And it's really simple to set that up. And then you can even take that one step further and say, actually, I really only care about this, though, during the work hours. After 5 p.m., it's your time. Yes, you're on the work network, but we're not really using it for work purposes at that point. So if you want to do a little bit more, then fine. So we can actually set a time restriction on this group policy and say, during the time restriction, you're following this group policy that says no video and music. However, during the hours of 5 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next morning, you can do what you want, and we're going to move you back to the normal corporate policy. So it's quite simple to set that up. We'll talk about that in just a minute, so bear with me. Now let's take the hypothetical of it's not just one user that's abusing their network privileges. It's actually a whole host of people that are contributing to this overall bandwidth usage. So what we can do is come over here under our wireless side. Let's actually start taking a look at some of these products in more detail. So if we click over here under wireless and click into access points, now, when we clicked into access points here, this is a full list of all the different APs that we have deployed in our San Francisco offices. There's about 185 of them. You can see their connectivity information, the model number. You can name them whatever you want. We have named ours very exciting numbers. And then over here, you have tags. So tags are organizational tools for you. You can tag your devices however you want. Here at Meraki, we have tended to tag our devices based on what floor they're on, maybe which department they're near, maybe which SSID they're broadcasting, things like that. So it's a very useful tool for us to simply tag a device. Let's go ahead and click into one of these devices and see a little bit more information about the hardware. So when we click in, we see which SSIDs are currently being broadcast on this device. We can see IP information. We see live data, so uplink traffic, current clients, as well as historic data over the last day. So connectivity, usage, and then clients that connected over the last day. There's some nice usage there. You also have an event log of what this device has been doing, the location, again, either on Google Maps or within a larger floor plan. And then you have live tools. So you can actually ping a device. You can reboot the device remotely. You can look at the throughput. You can look at the trace route. And all of these tools are going to stack on top of each other, so you have the ability to go in and see exactly what's going on with your device. Under LAN, you can see the different VLANs and radiuses, as well as under RF, you can see the channel utilization, overall usage, and the nearby mesh neighbor. So if that device should fall out of gateway mode for whatever reason, instead of disassociating all of its clients, it's going to reach out to its nearest mesh neighbor and then create a hop in your network and start servicing the clients again. So it's a very useful thing. So that is the access point. Now, these live tools, you're going to see live tools on our access points, our switches, security appliances, and these tools are unique based on what device they're on, but they essentially are enabling you to do remote troubleshooting. So let's look at some configuration options for this wireless access point. Now, I want to look at this very quickly and say, all right, we're looking at an application, iTunes, and we're using that hypothetical of we're seeing a lot of different people that are abusing their network privileges, or a lot of people that are slowly driving up the overall usage of that particular application. So let's first start with the different SSIDs that we have. So you've got the 15 different SSIDs per network that you can configure to whatever your needs are. So here's a page where it shows all of your different SSIDs. You can enable them, disable them very easily. You can click on Edit Settings here. You have a nice view of the high-level settings on how they're configured. And you can either edit the settings here, or you can come over here under Wireless and click into Access Control. And Access Control is essentially going to choose how users are authenticating to your network. So is it an open association? Is there a pre-shared key? Do you have your own radius server? If you're configuring with your own radius server, you simply scroll down the page here. There's going to be a radius server section that populates. You type in the host, the port, and the secret. That's it. Click on the test button, make sure everything looks good. I have had a customer who said he spent about 2 hours troubleshooting why users were not able to authenticate to the network, only to find out that he entered in 1 digit of his secret incorrectly. Just test it, make your life a little bit easier. Scrolling up a little bit more now, so we've chosen how users are authenticating to the network. Then we choose if there's a splash page. So no splash page, click through splash page where users have to acknowledge terms and conditions. Maybe you have a sign-on with things like Active Directory or Facebook Wi-Fi where users have to like or check into a Facebook page in order to access your network. This is great for passive brand awareness. You also have third-party credentials like Google Authenticator, things like that. You can also do SMS authentication. You can charge people to access your network. So if you choose billing, we can scroll down the page now, and a billing plan section has now populated on this particular page. You can also do something called Systems Manager Sentry Enrollment. Now, Systems Manager, this is what we call Enterprise Mobility Management. That's our name for it here. And what this does is it says you have a device, and in order to access this particular SSID, you must have Enterprise Mobility Management installed on your device. Without it, you cannot access this particular SSID. Maybe you can only access a guest SSID. So let me give you another quick hypothetical here. Let's take the idea of an employee bringing their own device into the network. How are you going to handle that? Well, that employee has their device. They want to do work on their device. However, you have resources at work that are confidential, and you don't want them to get out into the broader world. You don't want them to have be accessed on a device that you have no idea what the security credentials of that device are. So what you can say is, yes, we have a BYOD policy, so bring your own device policy. However, if you want to access anything further than just browsing the network, you must have Enterprise Mobility Management installed on your device, and then we can actually ascertain the security of that device. We can then give special permissions to you depending on what type of access levels you should have. So we'll get into that as we go, but keep that in mind. We're going to talk about this idea of an employee bringing their own device into work throughout today's session, so throughout the remainder of the demo today. So that's one thing here is essentially what this does is it throws up a splash page onto that user's device and says, you're not enrolled with Systems Manager yet. Please self-enroll. Click this button here and enroll. Once you're enrolled, then you have access to the network. That's simple to do. Also, if you've already invested some energy, time, money, etc. into Cisco's Identity Services Engine, we do have an integration built in here. It's a very valuable integration because we do understand that a lot of networks and a lot of IT infrastructures are actually mixed environments. So you might already have existing Cisco technologies and you want to incorporate some Meraki technologies into that. You most definitely can do that. If you have another vendor's devices completely, you can also interoperate Meraki devices with other vendors' devices. So we're not asking you to have a completely brand new full Meraki deployment by any means. But there are some definite levels of integration that we can help provide there. All right, let's scroll down the page a little bit more. So we've talked about how users are authenticating to the network. You can also set up walled gardens, captive portals. Scrolling down a little bit further, you can set up VLAN tagging. You can also set up bonjour forwarding, content filtering on an SSID level, as well as band selection. So as I mentioned, this is done on a per SSID level. So at the very top of the page here, you're actually, for each of these particular SSIDs, setting up the configurations for those SSIDs. So if I change to a different one, we're going to steer away from that page, and we'll see different settings that pop up depending on the type of SSID that we're talking about here. All right, so that's how users are authenticating to the network. Let's take that example of the BYOD device, and we have that device now logging in with Systems Manager Sentry. So their device now has Systems Manager on it, is enrolled with Enterprise Mobility Management. The next thing that we want to do is make sure that the wireless side is set up so that no one user or no group of users uses way too much bandwidth for one particular application or group of applications. So this is our firewall and traffic shaping page on the wireless side. So once again, this is set up on a per SSID level, so each SSID can have its own configurations. You can set your layer 3 firewall rules, layer 7 firewall rules. You can actually completely block certain URLs. Our engineers have actually fingerprinted many applications for you already. So for example, I can go ahead and block things like BitTorrent. If that's not something that's useful for you, then you can block it, or other applications. Scrolling down a little bit further, we can set per client and per SSID bandwidth limits. So for example, we can set each client to a 1 meg limit and an SSID to a 5 meg limit. You can also type these out manually. And then you can choose to shape traffic. So this is where you're not going to deny access to certain applications. You're simply going to limit the amount of bandwidth available for those applications. So thinking back to that iTunes example where we have many different users that are slowly driving up the bandwidth, right? Let's create a new rule. I can come over here to add. Once again, you can type the URL or the host name into this custom expression box, or you can choose from pre-fingerprinted applications that our engineering team has already put in here. So I can choose things like video and music and either choose all of these applications or specifically add things like iTunes or Netflix. Let's choose YouTube again, Spotify, you get the idea. Add these different applications into this list, and then what you can do is simply throttle the bandwidth down. You're not making it impossible to use, you're simply limiting how much bandwidth each user is able to use for this. You can also set a new traffic shaping rule and say, all right, those are applications that I want to limit. But VoIP and video conferencing, we were talking about these earlier. Things like WebEx, Skype, these are important. These are mission critical for meetings nowadays, those high-def video calls, right? So I can choose all VoIP and video conferencing and actually choose to ignore any per client limits. So we actually want to prioritize these. And then set a priority PCP or DSCP tag to really set a quality of service rule on the access point side. And then you can rearrange these rules. Maybe you want that one to be first. You get the idea. All right, so we've talked about how users are authenticating the network. We've talked about limiting what they can do. I also want to quickly talk about SSID availability. So you have all those different all the different access points in your network. And then you can say, all right, I want this particular SSID, so the corporate SSID, to be active on all APs. Or maybe you only want it to be active on certain access points. And you can choose, using those tags, which AP you want this particular SSID to be broadcasting on. And then you can also say, I only want this to be running during certain times of the day. So I only want this SSID to actually show up and be used maybe during the weekdays. Or sorry, let's say, there we go, 8 to 5, but only Monday through Friday. And you can also pull that out. You can change these hours over here. You get the idea. So you can change that, customize it to whatever your needs are. You can do that on a per SSID level. The other thing that you can do here is show a location heat map. So we're talking about users that are bringing in their own devices. We're talking about understanding how employees are actually using the network, where they congregate. This is really useful. So what you can do here is say, all right, show me throughout the day where we're seeing the highest concentration of users. This is really useful to make those business decisions because what you can do is say, I want to know where customers are congregating. And maybe that's where I'm going to put my most important displays, the displays where I really need to show the latest and greatest product that we have or something along those lines. You can also use this heat map to make staffing decisions, things like that. All right, so let's think now back to that bring your own device policy that we were talking about. So let's come down here, and I want to talk about our security appliance. Now, our IT team has actually pulled our security appliance into its own separate network because they're doing some playing around with the configurations on it. So I'm going to open up our security appliance. And here on the security appliance, we have a great summary report. This is exactly what's been going on with our security appliance. I can see top clients. I can see top operating systems, top block sites, threats, things like that. So this security appliance is a unified threat management device. It does a job of about 6 different devices, all in one little box. Now, as we hover over the security appliance here, we can see the appliance status. So if I click into that, we can start seeing information about the device itself, very similar to what we saw on the access point. So we see if we have a spare set up, so what do you do? It's very easy to set up a warm spare, by the way, for a security appliance. You click on spare, and that's it. You click back and forth on the primary. So it's a very, very simple thing to do to set up a warm spare. And all it's going to do is sit in the background while your primary security appliance operates. Because only one security appliance is going to be operating at a time, if you want to run a warm spare, you only need one license, even though you technically have two devices, because you're only using one of them at a time. Over here under the live data, we can see which ports are currently connected. We can see historic connectivity information. We can take a look at the uplinks, the DHCP information, the different leases that we have, subnets. We can take a look at the power supplies that are actually keeping this device online. And we can see that we have two hot swappable redundant power supplies. We can see the location. And then once again, we have live tools that are now specific to this particular security appliance. So pretty self-explanatory. Now, the thing that I want to highlight here is that this, like I said, is a UTM device. And on the side here, we see all the different things that this device can do. So we can look at the addressing in VLANs, DHCP, firewall, site-to-site VPN, client VPN. You get the idea. I'm not going to go through all of these features today because we simply don't have enough time. If you want to get a further deep dive on our security appliance, we do offer MX-only webinars that actually talk about a deep dive of just these particular devices. We actually offer those deep dive webinars on each of our different product categories. So let us know if you want to find out about one of those webinars or request a demo from your Meraki rep that is tailored to your questions and your needs. All right, let's quickly jump through a few things here. I'm going to first start off with the firewall because when people think of a security appliance, this is one of the main things that they think about, the firewall. So here you have as many different rules as you want. It's still in the blank drop-down menu. It's incredibly intuitive to set up these firewall rules. Now if I scroll down the page here, I want to highlight the Layer 7 firewall rules. So we're going to come down here to Layer 7 firewall rules. And this is very similar to what we saw in the AP, right? You can type the URL in here. You can add a Layer 7 firewall rule. You can choose from a pre-fingerprinted application in this list. But the other thing that you can do is geo-based IP firewall rules. So I can choose countries and say I want to deny traffic coming to or from the United States and the United Kingdom. Or conversely, I want to block any traffic that's not coming from one of those two countries. So it gives you the ability to be a bit more granular with where traffic is coming from, what you're allowing, what you're denying. You also have port forwarding rules, one-to-one, one-to-many NAT, as well as bond forwarding rules that are all on this firewall page. The next thing I want to show you is what I consider to be one of the most elegant site-to-site VPNs in the industry. I say this because you can configure it in about 3 mouse clicks. And this is also really useful for employees that want to bring their own device. Is maybe they have their home network, a teleworker network set up at home that you can set a site-to-site VPN with. Also, which I'm not going to talk about today just because we don't have time, you can also set up client VPN on those BYOD devices. But to get back to the site-to-site VPN here, like I said, about 3 mouse clicks. The first mouse click here is how you want it to be configured. Do you want it to be a hub, so mesh mode, or do you want it to be hub and spoke? If you choose hub and spoke, the mouse click number 2 is deciding which of these devices you want to be your hub. And then the third mouse click is actually coming down into this list here and choosing which of these subnets you want to have broadcasting across that VPN connection. And then that's it. That's as simple as it is. Now, if you do have non-Meraki VPN peers, you can simply scroll down to the bottom of this page here and choose this non-Meraki VPN peer section. Click on Add a Peer, type in the name, the IP, the subnet. You can customize the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 IPsec policies, and that's it. That's as simple as it is. And this is a self-healing site-to-site VPN, so if your IP address has changed for whatever reason, it's going to look at that and then actually make a decision and self-heal that particular VPN network. You can also come over here under VPN status. I was going to open this as a separate page and keep an eye on all of your different connections that you have within your network. Now, this leads me very well into the next thing that I want to talk about, and that's our traffic shaping page. Now, I think this is useful because if we're talking about those BYOD devices, clients bringing their own devices into your network, you want to make sure that at its heart, your network is secure. So you can set up some firewall rules. You can set up some traffic shaping rules. If I scroll down to the bottom of the page here, these traffic shaping rules are nearly identical to what you saw on the access point level, except now these are going to be operating at a network level, at the security appliance level. So very similar setup for those. But what I want to highlight here is in the middle of the page, this uplink selection. We have, and I think we are the only company that has a cloud-based SD-WAN feature built directly into our security appliances at no additional cost. So it's not anything else you have to pay additional licensing for. It's simply built in with our advanced security license, and it's available for you to use. So what exactly is SD-WAN? SD-WAN is the ability to set up your network in a way that you can set it and forget it, and your network is going to start making intelligent decisions based on priorities that you have set up. So what exactly does that mean? Well, let's scroll down here. The first thing that I want to highlight here is this custom performance class. So you can set up different custom performance classes where you can say, for this type of application, this is the maximum latency, jitter, and loss that I want to experience. So these are acceptable parameters in my mind. You can add any of those different custom performance classes as you need. Once you have those, then you can come here to the VPN traffic section, and you can say, how is my network being sent across between my different connections? Well, what we can do here is add a filter. And so what we can do here is say, all right, let's choose things like VoIP and video conferencing. We've talked about that being important. So we're going to choose VoIP and video conferencing, select that group of applications, and say, for these ones, I want to choose the best uplink for VoIP. And I can leave it just sitting like that. And my network now is going to make a decision and say, which is the best path for VoIP traffic to go down? Is it path 1 or is it path 2? Maybe it gets part of the way down path 1 and says, whoa, the bridge is out. I need to transfer to path 2. And it can do that very easily. So that's what this is doing. It's essentially saying, what is the status of my entire network and what is the best way for me to get VoIP traffic from point A to point B based on you telling me what's important to you. And then it's going to figure out what that path is and send the traffic. Now you can change this a little bit and say, my preferred uplink is actually WAN 1. And say, I want everything to go down WAN 1. However, if WAN 1 has poor performance or if that uplink is down, then I want it to fail over and either go the best performance class for VoIP or select that custom performance class of Citrix or whatever it might be. And I can select that performance class and say that is my failover. So if WAN 1 is not going well or if it's down, failover to either the best for VoIP or whatever the custom performance class that I've created is. So that is all built in to systems manage, or sorry, to the Meraki dashboard and to the Meraki security appliance. Now, if we come over here, back to the VPN status page, I'm going to scroll down here because down here we have something called uplink decisions. And this is where you can actually see all the decisions that are being made in your network and why it is that certain decisions are being made. So you can click in and you can see all of that relevant detailed information. Perfect. Now the last thing that I want to highlight here, actually the two last things I want to highlight on the security appliance are threat protection as well as the content filtering, because I think this is also very important for those BYOD types of scenarios. So here you have advanced malware protection, and it's a simple yes or no of do I want these things enabled or disabled. So advanced malware protection as well as intrusion detection and prevention, whether you want it on prevention, detection, etc. It's a drop-down menu. It's that easy to set. And then the same thing goes for content filtering. Here we have partnered with WebRoot's Bright Cloud, so you get always up-to-date content categories. And you simply click into this box right here, and you can see all the different categories that you can block from your network. You can also do URL blocking, etc. So it's a really simple way to ensure security on your network. The last thing I want to highlight here is going to be the Security Center. So on the Security Center here, we can come down and say what's been happening in the last month in terms of different threats on the network. Really, really easy way to do this. The next thing that I want to highlight now is going back over to our San Francisco office. And I know we're running out of time, but there's a few more things that I want to show you today, so bear with me. We're probably going to be like right up until the hour. But the next thing I want to highlight now are our switches. So we talked about security. Let's migrate over to our switches. And on the switches, we want to simply talk about the fact that if you click into one of these switches, again, you're getting the same visuals that you did on the security appliance, the access point. You can see which ports are currently in use. Let me choose a better switch for you. So that was one of our aggregation switches. Here's one of our access switches. So you can see which ports are currently in use. The lightning bolt indicates a PoE draw. I can click into the ports list and see using that CDP LLDP information what's plugged into all of those ports. Again, you can see the hot swappable power supplies, an event log, location, as well as live tools that are specific to this particular switch, especially the cable test. So for example, I can run a cable test on ports 10 through 20, and it's going to run an electric current down the cable and respond back to me and tell me the overall status of the cable, the length, the status of each of the twisted pairs, etc. So it's a great way to keep an eye on what's going on with your network. And the great part here is that you can actually configure on a per port basis with these particular devices. So I can click in to one of these ports and start editing its configuration. So you can enable the port, you can enable PoE, switch it between trunk and access. You have something called an access policy. So this is wired authentication. Essentially, this means that if you have a VoIP phone plugged into a conference room with an Ethernet cable, you cannot unplug the Ethernet cable from that VoIP phone, plug it into your own device, and start accessing the network. Instead, what this does is it puts a radius authentication on there. So you're going to have to type in your username and credentials on that particular port. We'll talk about that in a minute. You can also come down here and set up things like BPDU guard, so users cannot start servicing other clients by plugging a switch into another switch port. You can also set up port schedules so that during certain hours of the day, these ports are active only, let's say, during the hours of 9 to 5 p.m., just like we were talking about with the SSIDs. So you can schedule these on a per port basis. So it's a really great thing. You can also come over here under switch ports and do what we call virtual stacking. So it's the ability to say, I know that I want port 6 through 7 on every single switch that I have to be configured the same way. So I'm going to search on those ports. It's going to respond back to me, all of those different ports, and then I can start configuring them. Now, the other thing that we can do here, I'm just going to switch to a different page to expedite this, is you can set up the port schedules that I mentioned and the access policies on a separate page, and then you apply it on a per port basis. So this is one of those energy savings port schedules that I talked about. You can name this security, whatever you want it to be. But yeah, you can choose from a template that we have. So let's say 8 to 5 weekdays only. You can pull this out just like we saw with the access points. The other thing that you have are the access policies. So this is that wired authentication that I just mentioned, where you're going to set up a radius server and any port that has this guest access policy applied to it. So if I choose all of these, this is that virtual stacking that I mentioned. This is the ability to actually grab port 6 through 7 on every single port or on every single switch that we have and edit them as if they are one single entity. So I can edit all of them. And here I can say that I want this access policy of guest, which is this that we're looking at right now, applied to each of those ports. So here you say radius authentication, and it's that simple to do. All right, so that's switching. Let's now move forward and move on to Systems Manager. Now, Systems Manager, I think, is a really important piece of this story, especially as we're talking about BYOD devices. So Systems Manager here is the full list of all the client devices we have. I can search on a device like an iPad and pull up one of our iPads and see more detailed information about the device, the charge. I can see if it's compliant with any policies that we've already set up. So we're going to talk really quickly about geofencing, security policies, things like that. But this device showing up as green tick marked. It is compliant with those policies. If it was not compliant, it would show up as an X. And then you can actually say that if it is not compliant with, let's say, our Meraki secure policy, we're going to remove access to client VPN, for example. So based on the security posturing of that device, you can choose what type of access levels that device has to different types of information in your network. You also have remote security access here, so you can clear passcodes, lock a device, erase a device remotely, as well as lock it into a single application. So this device we actually use at our reception desk. So it's our sign-in device, and we have it locked into an application called Envoy, which is our sign-in application. Now, as we move really quickly through Systems Manager here, you can actually remotely push applications out to devices. You simply add a new device. So for example, I can type in math, and I can pull up all of the math applications, click on add, and say that I want to install it on all devices or only devices that are tagged, let's say, as employee. And it's going to push it out to client devices that are tagged as employee. So it's a really easy way to push applications out. You can also use volume purchase program and reclaim applications, things like that. So if you pay for applications, you can reclaim them and reissue them to another device. You also can set up profiles in Systems Manager that says, based on the type of profile that you're a part of, so for example, Cisco Meraki settings one, we can add different settings. So you can say that anybody that's added to this profile, we want you to automatically connect to a certain wireless network, or we want to automatically push items to your device, things like PDFs, documentation. We can also come down here and say that I want to automatically set up a particular type of VPN, or even set a restriction on your device. So talking about those BYOD devices, maybe you're in a secure environment and you want to disable the use of the camera on that device. Or maybe you want to remove other options, so in-app purchases, or you can restrict downloading other applications, things like that. You can also require a device to have a passcode enabled on it. It's up to them what the passcode is, but you require one. All right, moving quickly. I know I'm talking about these things quickly, but I am just giving you a highlight view of some of the things that are available. But you have the ability to set up a geofence management system. So for example, if a device should leave this certain geofenced area, you can give them a grace period of 5 minutes, an hour, whatever your needs are, and say that after an hour, you're going to start removing access to certain applications or features from their device to keep it a bit more secure. You can also set up policies and say if a device is not compliant with our Meraki security policy, meaning that they have screen lock, disk encryption, antivirus, etc., then they cannot access certain resources. And then you can set up an easier one, for example, and say, okay, you don't need all of these things to access our BYOD portfolio. So for example, if you just want to browse the network, you need to have disk encryption, but you don't necessarily need to have a passcode on your device, things like that. All right, so that's a quick look at Systems Manager. Now I want to quickly look at our cameras. So I'm just going to choose a camera here. Let's choose our bike room. And this is our San Francisco bike room. And this is a live stream of our security cameras. So there's all of the camera footage is actually stored on the camera itself. There's no NVR, so there's no additional storage systems or recording systems that you need to have. You can view all of your cameras here. You can say, show me what was happening on Thursday at 9 a.m., for example, and it'll pull up the footage using natural language search. You can also do a motion search and say what happened in this area, and it'll pull up timestamps of when there was activity in a particular region on that camera. So, for example, it'll pull up a log of where we're probably going to see somebody walk straight through this blue dotted area here and come into the area that I've highlighted and said, show me what's happening in this particular area. You can also take a look at the analytics. You can look at heat maps. You also have event logs, and you can set up settings for these cameras. So you can set up zoom and focus. You can set up the retention, so whether you want only to hold on to footage where there is motion in the field of view. You can schedule it to only record during certain times of the day. You get the idea. There's a lot of different features there. All right, that is the demo. I know it was quick. We talked about a lot of different material. And I just quickly want to wrap up today's session by pointing out that we have an entire section of our website dedicated to customer stories. So if you do want to hear about some other reference customers, feel free to go to meraki.cisco.com/customers. Nespresso, MIT, Accor, they're just some of the ones that we have on that particular page that are using the Meraki system successfully. Then we have the different product families. So like I said at the very beginning of the webinar, we have our access points, our security appliances, access and aggregation switches, enterprise mobility management, communications, and our security cameras, all managed via the exact same dashboard. So what are your next steps? Reach out to your Meraki representative to request your free access point for attending today's session. You can find their details in the reminder email for today's webinar, or you can go to meraki.cisco.com/contact. If you'd like to try any of the devices I talked about in today's session, we do have a free trial program. We'll ship the devices to you. It's free of charge there and back to us in the EU, so there's no hassle, no cost to you whatsoever. Let your representative know or go to meraki.cisco.com/eval. And then keep an eye on our website and our blog. This is where we talk about a lot of new features and different product announcements and things like that. So thank you everybody for your time and attention today. I hope you benefited from the webinar, and I hope to hear from you soon.